thank you for joining us for the webinar today. So I think as most of you know, but my name's Stephen Moore and I'm the head of climate action at the GSMA. As part of our efforts to move the mobile industry to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, we know that switching to renewable energy is going to be central to that. So I'm happy to introduce our Cleantech team, who have just released a new report on using and switching to renewable energy for mobile towers. So I'll hand over now to Julep and to Tom.
Sure. Thank you very much, Stephen, for the introduction. Hope everyone can hear me clearly on the call. So my name is Tulip Tilakaratne. I'm the Senior Market Engagement Manager for the GSMA Cleantech Program. Very pleased to meet you. I am calling from Sri Lanka at the moment. And while welcoming everyone to the call, just asking for a quick intro on the chat from everyone, so we know each one of you who's on the call. And just I'll answer Kevin's question. Yes, we plan to share the slides after the call. Over to you, Thomas, for a quick intro.
Hi, my name's Thomas. I'm working with Julep as part of the Cleantech team. I'll be talking through a little bit of the presentation today, as well as moderating some of the discussion. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Just a quick couple of housekeeping things. Please do put in the chat any issues with audio, if anything's not coming through clearly. We're going to be using an interactive voting tool. I'll be posting the link to join that in the chat as we go. And then just one other thing, as if for the presentation part, when we're not having a discussion, if everyone could keep themselves on mute, that would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. And very quickly, in case any one of you were not in any of the previous discussions and aren't clear about the Cleantech program, so the Cleantech program's overall objective is to see the digital role in the global progression towards a greener and a cleaner economy. And we look into various topics and areas where digital technology can play a role, or where we can make the overall technology provision a little more cleaner. So we look at three main topics. So mainly looking at natural resource management, how digital technology can support the overall natural resource management process. That's the first one. And the second area is looking at circular economy for the industry, and also global as a global concept. So we look into plastics management, waste management as a whole, and also have started to look at e-waste management. So I had the luxury to speak to you guys sometime earlier and see how we can work on e-waste and some of our work on e-waste policy, so that we got the opportunity to present. We have some resources. You can catch up with me later on that. And the third area is mainly looking at the industry itself and seeing how we can look at making our industry a cleaner one. So we look at using of renewable energy, mainly for off-grid and bad grid sites. So we can go into the next slide, Tom.
Recording is on.
So just for a quick, to provide you with a quick background, what we know at the moment is almost 270,000 towers are today either off-grid or in bad grid areas in low and middle income countries, right? So we assume that this generates almost 3% of the industry's emissions that were calculated on a recent study which Stephen led. And in Africa alone, 32% of all towers are either in off-grid or bad grid areas and still powered with non-renewable sources. So this is a large opportunity for us to look at in the industry's progression towards neutrality. So next slide, we will quickly provide you of what's happening today. We are going to have a quick discussion on the report. So we hope you have already seen the report. So I want to give you the whistle-stop tour of the report in about 5 minutes' time, and then go into a quick discussion or your thoughts about the report on the online tool. So we get familiar with how to use the tool and how it works, kind of thing, for 5 minutes. And then we go into a deep dive into the barriers. So what I've tried to do today is, although the report provides a good summary of our findings of the study, we also know that the study brought a lot more. So I'm trying to give the industry aspect of it and some of the challenges that you had. But I believe that we haven't captured all the challenges, all the barriers. So it'll be really great to have the discussions following each session to understand what the barriers you have on ground, and also to understand from each of you, like what you feel GSMA's role, Cleantech's role could be in this whole journey. So, and I also understand for some of you, because this study focuses particularly on low and middle income countries. You're joining from a slightly different category of country. It will be really great to hear your perspective as well, on some of the on-grid renewable energy use, and also some ways that you could help the other peer or operators in other parts of the world. So let's move on to the next slide, and I hand over to you, Tom, to provide us with a quick overview of the study, and also to share about the statistics of the numbers we generated from the model.
Thank you, Julep. Yeah, of course. I will start with the aims of the study. The aim of the study was to understand the challenge to convert off and bad grid towers to renewable energy globally. The second area was to map the energy ecosystem across low to medium income countries, primarily in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And lastly, through stakeholder engagements, to identify barriers prohibiting the uptake of renewable energy technologies. So like I said, this is just going to be a whistle-stop tour, so I'll move straight on to the methodology used. The report was conducted in 3 parts. The first identified the number of towers globally through modeling tools. The second identified a list of priority countries based on a number of quantitative and qualitative data metrics, and ranked the countries based on the opportunity in each one present for switching the towers to renewable energy. And finally, the third part was through stakeholder engagements, looked at the opportunities and barriers, and that's something that we'll be talking through in more detail and in this presentation. From that, 7 lighthouse countries have been identified, and I'll list them out, I'll list them out here: Mali, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Fiji, and Peru. So moving on to the next slide, we can just quickly see the size of the renewable energy opportunity. The report has identified a number of trends in the global towers. Looking at the period 2014 to 20, we can see that the total number of towers has increased. However, the number of towers in bad and off-grid sites has decreased. Taking a look at the key highlights on this next slide, we can see that in this period, 1 million towers have been added globally. Grid expansions, primarily in South Asia, have reduced the number of off-grid sites by a third. And then work within the industry has managed to increase the number of renewable energy sites by 45%. However, very importantly, 88% of the off-grid and bad-grid towers that still exist are running on diesel. This presents a huge opportunity, since these towers contribute, as Julep mentioned, around 3% of the industry's total emissions, equivalent to around 7 million tons of CO2. So I'll pass back over to Julep now to talk you through in more detail the barriers identified through the report.
Sure, just to thanks, Tom, and very quickly to highlight, we are going to do a deep dive into these, and also to kind of dissect them into smaller parts. So this is the summary that's highlighted in the report. So the key barriers we've highlighted in the report are The first one, how the tower sharing model has changed or transformed. Second one, looking at how some of the contracting procedures on energy management still exist in the previous form. How there's lack of price benchmarking when it comes to ESCOs and working with ESCOs in certain areas. Improved access to electricity, as Tom mentioned. The grid has grown, but it's not very transparent growth. So that's also hindered the planning procedure of operators, as you would know. Some of the opportunities or trends, small cell sites could be a potential. We'll cover that. And we also know that there's an ABC mini grid model of using a mini grid to power the tower and the businesses and the communities around the area. This was called community power in the previous Green Power for Mobile program. That hadn't scaled over the last 10 years. There's regulation around energy management that's also hindering or sometimes not as facilitating. So these are the key 5 trends or barriers highlighted. Next slide would show you the opportunities we mentioned in the report. So the opportunities would be, first of all, strengthening the internal business case for the operators, using some data-driven tools, looking at how we can standardize some of the procedures when we work with towercos, ESCOs, looking at specific business models that can help working on the ABC mini grid model or using small cell sites for your operations in rural tower areas. Case studies, replication guides, something that GSMA can help doing and sharing with peer organizations, and also do a little bit of advocacy work with the energy and telecom policies. So those are the opportunities highlighted. As I told you, I'm running through them because we are going to deep dive in the next 45 minutes. So very quickly, we'll go to the next slide. And as Tom has mentioned and chat, we are going to try and use an interactive tool so we can get everyone on board and get you interacting. So we see about 39 of you, so minus 2 of Thomas's, 2 of Dulip's, so it's about 35 of you on the call, right? So it'll be really great if all of you can get on menti.com, menti.com, and the code you have to give is 5697180. You can do this on your computer on a different browser or different screen, or you can do it on your phone if you find like typing on the phone is easier. All of us can type these days on the phone very fast, so wherever you're fast, you can use that. So as I say that, Tom will help us to moderate the initial part. So I'll hand over to you and you can see your screen. We'll see what happens on Menti. The first part is mainly for us to kind of get the hang of it, and also to get like how many of you had the chance to read through the report. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Julep. Yeah, hopefully you're now seeing the Menti presentation on your screens. If any of you are still logging on, there's the web address and the code indicated at the top. And I can see a few people have already added some likes to the page, so thank you for that. Shows us how many people are already logged in. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, great. First question, and don't worry if you're not already on it. It will let you join. Will let you join later anyway. First question, well, should I say test question? Have you managed to read the report, Renewable Energy for Mobile Towers? And just so you know, the responses are anonymous, so feel free to answer honestly. Okay. 18, 20. Thank you for that.
We have one person who has read the report for most of the questions, if we will find that person. And secondly, thanks very much. If anyone else, this is just to find out like the tool is working, and we can see you like your responses on screen. That's the idea. Right. And the second question is mainly for us to, don't go there, Tom, yet, but for us to find out whether you've been listening to Tom, right? So anyone else struggling to vote or struggling to make the Menti work, feel free, like, quickly to use that. Yeah, we see some late voters coming up, ballot boxes being counted. The result might change, as we've seen. So anyone else? Last minute voters? No, I think we are working with 24 and we'll move forward. But feel free if anyone else is like on the phone, you want to dial in at later. It's menti.com, very easy, and the code is 5697180. Yeah, we can move along. And those who haven't seen the report, yeah, as you go and answer the next question, I'll be happy to share a link on chat just in case you haven't had a chance. You can use the opportunity to download the report and have a quick skim through. Here we go. Yeah, this is to see how well you have listened to Tom.
Give it a few more seconds here, and then it will reveal the right answer.
Oh,
It's close. In the interest of time, I'll reveal the right answer was Malawi, was not one of the 7 lighthouse countries included in the report. Okay.
yeah, sure. Thanks. And very quickly to remind you, yeah, it was a trick question because the lighthouse country is Mali and not Malawi, right? So those who had the chance to skim through and those who are planning to, feel free to let us know what you thought about the report. I know one person would definitely answer this clearly, but for the rest, it's fine. Just let us know your thoughts, initial thoughts when you had the look at the report. And secondly, what we can do is when you go to the next part, we will be presenting and then you can answer based on that. So the first part of this is mainly for us to find out voting tool works, everything is fine, so we can see that, and that also to get an indication on where you are on seeing our report. Okay, thank you guys.
Okay. Thank you for the responses on that. A few more seconds. Okay, thank you.
Sure, we can move back to the presentation, and now in this next session, we will take you through the key barriers that we found in the study. So just to remind you, what we tried to do is to dig in, first of all, to explore, as Tom mentioned, the size of the problem. We understood that 88% of all off-grid and battery towers across the world, mainly in LMICs, are not powered, or rather powered by non-renewable sources. So we then looked at the lighthouse countries and some of the other markets to understand what the key barriers were, why these towers aren't being converted or switched to renewable energy, why new sites are still being added with diesel. So these are the key barriers that we have listed out. This is what we found in the study. So this is slightly in-depth version than what you will see in the report. So just to letting you know. And it'll be great for this section. This would be the key section around today's webinar. So it would, we appreciate very much if you can, at the end of this session, in the interactive session, if you can come out and let us know about your countries, right? And what happens in your markets, what the challenges are in the countries that you know, right? And of course, if there are any specific what you say, if you have any specific questions, right, you can ask us as well on the chat, so we can answer them as we go into the discussion. So starting off, its first barrier or the trend we see is that at the moment 70% of global towers are managed by tower cos or tower companies. The way the tower companies assess the business model versus the operators assesses the business model for a tower is different. And as a result, what happens is there is at the moment a lesser of a business case for a tower co to convert a tower into renewable energy compared to an operator. So we'll go into the next slide and just show you, I'll try to give you examples from different countries. So this is Mali, one of our first lighthouse countries, and you can see that this is a very kind of populated slide, but the area I'll get your attention would be on the red box and the orange box. So you can see that almost 1,800 towers owned by Orange in Mali. Almost 1/3 of them are converted already into renewable energy, and they are still planning to add more in their long-term plan. So this is a country with purely operator-owned towers. And however, ESCOs are coming up in the country. We will go into the next slide. We will cover those barriers in the next one. So the second one is on the legacy energy contracting processes. So if you are familiar, or if you are getting involved in the tower management process, you know that previously most of the towers had the energy OPEX pass-through model, which is basically where the operator had to pay for energy cost for a tower. And if that's the model that's there, or the contract on energy, there's lesser of an incentive for TowerCo to drive the energy change because mainly operator pays for everything as a cost item. So that's one of the challenges, and we see in some markets this being changed. We can go to the next slide, and you will see. This is the example from Uganda. 80% of the towers owned by TowerCo at the moment, and in orange square, you can see a rectangle. You can see that the key barrier is that there's a varying business model when it comes to renewable energy use for towers, and also the energy OPEX pass-through model is existing indirectly in some form. Although there might be a set price for energy, they also get a monthly rate specifically on additional energy costs. So basically it's the same model, but in different forms and functions. So there is an opportunity to renegotiate these contracts with the TowerCos and also to work on a model that partially at least is win-win. Next slide, we are going to try and cover the third barrier, is mainly on energy service companies or ESCOs. We see that ESCOs are one of the opportunities for this conversion into renewable energy because their pure business is energy, and they look at renewable energy as a larger opportunity. They have long-term contracts with operators and TowerCos. However, unfortunately, at the moment, this model is rather new in some markets. And because of that, the pricing is very different, and operators are unsure to look at renewable energy support from a ESCO and say, okay, this is the best price. And also there's no proper contracting procedure to work with an ESCO. So you can go into the next slide and see that this is an example from Fiji. So Fiji we studied as a small island state, and also because Digicel is very close to us, we asked them about the other islands as well, although some of the other Pacific islands are even more challenged when it comes to some of the energy related challenges. So when Digicel wanted to set up their some of the solar services, some of ESCOs came up with prices, but these prices were so different, they weren't even sure which pricing was accurate. So Digicel themselves made the investment and used their own staff to kind of set up the solar services. So it is a bit of an inefficient process where the ESCO can have their business model and support that if this pricing is set and things are aligned. The good news is, as we speak, we know that IFC is currently conducting a study looking at the ESCO model and also to understand how at global level they can standardize and support the ESCOs. In the next slide, we look into the fourth trend or barrier. So you can see that, of course, MNOs, you guys, there's a limited capex, and what happens is when it comes to network expansion, upgrading 2G into 3G, 3G into 4G, new coverage areas in some of the countries. So most of the available capex is limited for renewable energy. So that's a main challenge as well. Next slide, you will see that we are also looking at grid. So Tom mentioned this, I kind of highlighted. So you can see on the right-hand side how the rural electrification has grown in different regions of the world. And on the other side, you'll see how the tower numbers have grown as well, the off-grid tower numbers. So this is an interesting story where we see that when it comes to the grid expansion, South Asia, Southeast Asia has been massive expansion over the last 5 to 6 years. Most of the off-grid sites are now slowly moving into grid areas. However, still operators are finding this challenging, mainly because this grid expansion is not very transparent. So they are not able to make plans. And if they know that in the next 2 years, 3 years, if the grid is coming to this area, the operator is reluctant to have renewable energy for two reasons. One, it might not come, it might come earlier. And the second reason is that although grid expansion might happen, some of the other policies like net metering is not established very strongly. We'll come to that in the next point. We go to the next slide, which is about Bangladesh. So you can see Bangladesh is one of the lighthouse countries. So you can see the example. Over the last 5 to 6 years, the off-grid towers reduced by 10 times, so moved into on-grid. Still, when we speak to some of the operators in Bangladesh, they are reluctant to make that investment on renewable energy because the grid might come to some areas and still it's not very clear. So that's a little bit of an incentive-related challenge and also some space challenges as well, as you can see. In the next slide, I'm going to cover the last 6 barriers rather quickly. So the 6th one is looking at the policy environment, as I mentioned. So there's 2 types of policies here. One would be the national energy policy of the market, and the second one would be the national telecom regulation. So we see that some of the energy policies are existing, net metering, procurement agreements at corporate level are there. You can purchase energy and offset with your solar towers or solar sites. However, even that's the case, we see that some of the policies are not aligned to support the private sector as much as it's possible, and some telecom regulators haven't grown into encouraging the operators to adopt renewable energy. So that's one challenge. A slightly different case study you might see in the report is India, where you can see how the Indian regulator and also the Energy Ministry work together to encourage operators to adopt renewable energy solutions. The 7th one looks at specific technical challenges still prevalent with solar solutions. We move to the next one, looking at, I mentioned this one specifically. So the ABC mini grid model was previously seen as an opportunity where the operator could create an anchor site connected to a mini grid and provide power to the businesses, that's the B, and the community around it. So this was seen as a high potential opportunity. We have tested it out in a couple of markets, but it hasn't scaled due to a couple of challenges. The ninth one is something that we are all familiar with and Stephen is championing. So this is a trend or opportunity where you see that operators are currently making targets on carbon emission reductions. So this is clearly an area where we can work towards, specifically on off-grid and bad-grid sites, but it's not industry-wide when it comes to some of the LMICs. There are countries where operators are still struggling to meet those targets or make those changes due to the reasons I mentioned earlier. And the last one is another opportunity. So we see that in countries, especially like DRC, we can move to the next slide where I can explain. So we see that the African mobile network is a tower co. They are setting up these towers called small cell sites, which are very tiny little sites. And these sites are covering in the very rural most areas, purely run by a solar and a small battery, and they would provide the coverage for a specific area. And they use the model called NAAS, or Network as a Service. So Africa Mobile Network provides the complete solution to the operator, and they set it up in the rural most areas. So we see 235 of them being used. So this might be an opportunity that we could encourage in the rural most areas where the electrification is very, very low. The next example is slightly different, is Myanmar. This is Peru. So we also have in Peru the same small cell site where we see that Telefonica, who might be on the call as well, they have set a IPT service to encourage these small cell sites in some of the Latin American markets. So it's really encouraging to see some of these models being used. So for the barriers, we have covered all the regions where, starting from Southeast Asia, small island states, and up to Latin America. In the next slide, you would see that in Myanmar, we have the example slightly opposite to what I mentioned, right? So Yoma Micropower, working with the Smart Power Myanmar program in Myanmar, with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, has managed to scale some of the ABC mini-grid model related mini-grids there, and they are currently going through this study, and they might find out some of the learnings which can be useful for everyone. So we are keeping a watch there. Next slide is quickly showing you what the barriers are and how they spread through different markets. And you can see some of them are consistent across all the regions, and some of them are only in few. When we share the slides, please have a look, and it's also in the report. Next slide is where we are going to have a quick discussion, quick reaction from you to see what you think about these barriers. Do you think all these barriers are there in your markets? Whether there are some that's not relevant to you or some you feel we haven't captured. So we move back to our next Menti exercise. So we go back to www.menti.com. It's the same code. If you have it on phone, it'll just refresh itself. The first question is for us to go through the barriers and rank them from your market experience, whether these are relevant for you or not relevant. So you can rate them very high if it's very relevant, and not high if it's not relevant in your market. So I'll start with the tower ownership has changed. There's a lot of ownership for TowerCo, but you haven't addressed the renewable energy business case strongly. That's the first one. Legacy contracts such as the energy OPEX pass-through model still exist in your markets you operate. The ESCO model is not standardized, so it's not being used very strongly. Availability of CapEx for renewable energy, and the fifth one is national grid. It has improved, but the transparency is lacking. So those are the 5 key barriers on the first part. So would be great to hear your feedback about which one you feel is more relevant or less relevant for you. And you might be operating in several markets. In that case, you can think of this as a general issue and share, or if there's this issue existing specifically in one market that you operate, would be great to add it here. So at the end of 3 slides here on Menti, we can have a quick discussion with you. You can come off mute and share your thoughts as well in a couple of minutes. So before that, would be great to have your ranking here, and we'll wait another minute for those who are just completing your rankings. I know we are going slightly fast, so to ensure that we finish on the hour, but would be great if you can quickly give us your feedback. And we see it's interesting. We see that on this collective ranking that the non-standardizing of contracts is low, and legacy or energy OPEX pass-through model is low, whereas the others rank more than half. So that's good to see, and mainly the CapEx availability. So thank you very much, and we can move into the next set of barriers. Yeah. So again, it's the same task where if you can quickly rank the next set of barriers to say which ones are more relevant or which ones are less relevant in your market.
Thank you for this. I think in the interest of time, and since there's still the opportunity to hear feedback, I'll move to the next question. This is giving you guys the opportunity to, with a text answer, indicate any barriers that you see are missing from what we've discussed so far today. And it's also the opportunity for anyone who would like to come off mute and to share with the group their thoughts, specifically around the barriers, or generally on the report. And just in the interest of time, I think we'll just try to keep it to a couple of minutes. But please feel free to come off mute as you're answering the questions.
Also, Tom, thanks. If you feel that the barriers we've highlighted here are the key ones that you've seen in your markets, if you operate in LMIC, would be great to hear that as well here. So feel free to type in, or as Tom said, just so we can save a minute or two. It'll be great if you can just come off mute and share. Yeah, there's another barrier, and it's that, so we can all hear about it as well. Thank you very much. We have the first additional barrier coming in, the local company imposing a surcharge for renewable energy.
Yeah, so this was me, as Tom Law from JT. The local electricity company in Jersey has a connection surcharge that it imposes if you want to connect renewables back into the grid. Unfortunately, the electricity company here in Jersey isn't regulated, and so that charge is quite high, and it actually makes the business case for solar or wind incredibly long, sort of 10 to 15 years payback, which is quite a hard investment to then take through the business. So I think that I guess the bigger point is a lack of a regulatory framework that encourages sustainable renewable energy, certainly in the Channel Islands.
Sure, the point around storage, very real. This would link to the technical challenges we highlighted, but a good point. If you want to add anything else, the person who added this, feel free to come off mute. And anyone else, if you want to share an additional thought, feel free to come off and share with us as well. Energy cost is very low in ME. Thanks for the note on Safaricom. Anyone else, if you want to share your thoughts, please feel free. Sure. So thank you very much for those who shared additional challenges. I'll wait for 30 more seconds in case you have typed a question halfway through, but feel free to send it in because we will keep it on this slide, Tom, so that anyone who's typing, your responses would still come in and we can collect it. Meanwhile, on screen, we'll move into the PowerPoint so I can take you through the opportunities that we highlighted. So feel free if you're typing in to send it in so we can capture everything. And meanwhile, we can move into the opportunities. So I want to spend about 5 minutes very quickly to share what the opportunities we highlighted in our report, and also to ask you, like, are these the opportunities you see that we could address, or is there anything else that we have missed that you want us to cover or highlight? So the first one we see is the challenge that operators internally need to create the business case for renewable energy. And for that, you might need some of the data-driven tools to support that business case, to identify like what's the advantage, or what's the availability of solar resources, wind resources in a specific location that you want to have a site or something like that. So that you can start by creating that business case. The second one is looking at setting up this platform for sharing information on what the funding is available. There are research grants, there are opportunities for industry stakeholders. So that's the second one where we see that as GSMA we can set that platform up. And for the ABC mini grid models, that we could create some sort of data analysis tool which can use and see, would this specific location work for the mini grid model? What is the community size? What's the distance to the site? And what the generation would be, or the use would be, some sort of business model on that would help operators and other partners to set it up. And the fourth one is looking at what GSMA normally does is like creating case studies, insights, learnings, and sessions like this, where we talk to the industry about the findings and also share some of the best practices across markets. So these are the ones that we feel that might help the internal decision. And on the other side, we go to the next slide to cover very quickly some of the challenges in the ecosystem itself. So the first one is looking at the energy contracts between towercos and MNOs, and also some of the energy contracts with ESCOs. We can provide some sort of best practice guideline on how these contracts should be structured or something like that. The sixth one is looking at specifically price benchmarking tools for renewable energy in different countries. This should be the usual price for tower, and this is how solar pricing should be structured or something like that. The next one is looking at the RFP process, working with mainly ESCOs and also defining KPIs so that it'll be easier for operators and towercos to work with the ESCO community. The eighth one is mainly looking at the evaluation or monitoring of renewable energy. So also might be something that's also relevant for you, where when it comes to an deployment of renewable energy, how would you know what's the value add, what's the ROI, and from environment aspect, from economic aspect, how can you measure it? So there might be a requirement on tools to do this monitoring so that operators can enhance or use this whole idea of renewable energy. And the final one, it might be something that you've seen as the strongest case on the second slide on Menti, is on policy and regulatory advice and guidance, so that we could provide some sort of best practice on regulation, on energy regulation, as the example mentioned earlier, and also on telecom regulation where relevant, to say that these are the kind of guidance you can provide to the operators. These are the kind of support we can provide in the energy management area, the net metering area, etc. So just a global role highlighted there. So those are the two quick slides looking at the opportunities. The first one looked mainly at, just to recall, the first one mainly looked at the decision to go for renewable energy, and the second one looked at mainly the ecosystem challenges, operators working with towercos, and operators working with ESCOs. So, so that we have a last 10 minutes for our discussion, we can move quickly to Menti. Yeah, so please get back on the phone or wherever you have the menti.com, so you can use it to tell us which opportunity on the internal business case side you feel are more relevant. Do you feel that data-driven business tools are useful? Some of the platforms to share about funding and research opportunities, business cases and insights, learnings as this one, ABC mini-grid model, very specific one, where we could support. So we'll hear from you very quickly on Menti. We'll wait another minute so you can rank this one. And obviously the next couple of slides, it follows the same format. So in the next one, we are going to discuss about the ecosystem related challenges and what you feel GSMA can do. And on the last slide, we are going to ask you what specific opportunities are missed here. And from your experience and your understanding about the environment ecosystem in your country, what you feel GSMA could do. So thank you for the 10 people who provided your feedback. So we see that the main area you feel we can add value is on case studies, insights, and learnings. And we could go to the next slide, Tom. So very quickly, we can also ask the participants to rank on the ecosystem related support, where you feel we can provide the most support. Is it on the guidance or standardizing some of the contracts between towercos, MNOs, and ESCOs, price benchmarking tools for ESCOs, RFP procedures, some templates, some best practices on this whole process. And the fourth one is mainly around the monitoring and evaluation, how to see the impact of renewable energy use. And the final one to see what sort of policy and regulatory support maybe provide an advocacy role for your telco regulators and also for your energy regulators in countries. So in some countries, we have heard that when it comes to net metering, they have a specific byline saying that net metering is allowed only for rooftop sites, but not on ground-based sites. So if you have an operator with a mobile tower, there's very less or almost no rooftop space. So whatever the solar site they have on, or solar panels they have on the site would be on ground based, so they can't use net metering. So policies like these specific ones that make it difficult for operators to access. So maybe we can provide some guidelines there to support. That's on the opportunities, and you already know what's going to be the last slide. Last slide is providing you with an opportunity to tell us like what area is missing, what can GSMA do, is there anything else that we could do from Cleantech side or from Climate Action Task Force side to support these barriers, and feel free to add them in here so we can also capture them and also discuss. Since we have 6 minutes on the call, we can use this for the final discussion as well. So anyone wants to make a comment or have any feedback on overall presentation, or like, let's say, any area you'd like to work on, anything missing here, please feel free to share with us now so we can use it as well as an improvement. Yeah, the point on storage, well mentioned, well noted, and we will take it forward. And we do have some supporting organizations in our the working group, which I'll come to it in a minute. But thank you very much for that point. Anyone else, if you're typing, feel free to send your thoughts in, or if you want to come off mute and share your thoughts, feel free to do that. So we'll be grateful to have your feedback on here, and also to understand as industry stakeholders of the climate action team, like these are the kind of specific suggestions that you feel we should act on or work on. Sure. Anyone else who's typing in, I'll provide like 30 seconds. We can hold on for it to come on screen. If not, we could quickly go. Yes, percentage of renewable energy. Sure. Would the person who sent this second comment like to share anything else? No? Okay, in that case, Tom, what we could do is we can do the same thing, leave the screen open so people can type and send in your thoughts or your feedback or any other opportunities you see for GSMA Cleantech team. And we can move into the PowerPoint presentation for the last slide so that I can quickly mention to you. So our contact details are here in case you want to get in touch with us. That's the first point. And the second point is just to mention that the Cleantech program is funded by the FCDO, and also thanking them for the opportunity for us to do this work. And next one is to mention that after publishing this report last September, we have set up a very small working group on renewable energy So this working group mainly consists of operator members. Some of you are already there represented. And we also have members from TowerCos. We have members from ESCOs, some of the donor communities, some investors, some ecosystem partners like Huawei and Ericsson. So the working group's main objective is for us to work on these challenges and to see how we can address some of the challenges as well. So that's why I thanked the main suggestion on storage, so we can put it forward to the working group and see what sort of solutions are there. And anyone in this group, if you want to find out whether your organization is represented or you want to be part of the renewable energy work that we are doing, feel free to reach out to us. So thank you so much for your time. We know we are 1 minute over, so we will stop now and take this opportunity to say a big thank you and take care and stay safe.